you feel as though, would you agree with me in the sentiment that the left has pushed so hard for total control of our society over the last however many years? It's almost to a point where saying 2013 was a different time. Would you say that because they pushed so hard, they've created this backlash, and the backlash caused them to backlash back again, so they doubled down with their ideology, and then they lose another argument, they lose another ideological war, they lose another meme war, and they double down and they double down again and again, and they can't seem to meme, they can't seem to argue, they don't want to have an intellectual discussion, and as an interpretation of what you were saying, there doesn't seem to be any care of what's right with them. They just want power. They just want to win. Would you agree with the sentiment that they're burning themselves out and creating the mass red pilling of the conservative movement that we see going on? Would you possibly think that maybe they've committed suicide, and talks like this, people like yourself, Ben Shapiro, and others who talk to people like the subjects that we do, the taboo of nowadays, possibly that this is the answer to defeat the leftist stranglehold that's on our society?
Okay, so we'll untangle some of that. Okay, so first of all, the first observation is a really interesting one, because you know that things can go out of hand very, very rapidly.
Yeah.
And the reason they do that is because of positive feedback loops. Now, the thing that Kurzweil talks about is a positive feedback loop. An intelligent machine makes another intelligent machine that makes another intelligent machine. And that's a positive feedback loop, and that can spiral upwards out of control very rapidly. And that's what polarization is. It's like, I tap you, you tap me. I slap you, you punch me. Well, up it goes. Well, I think that's partly why in the New Testament, for example, there's an injunction that says, turn the other cheek, resist not evil. Why? Because otherwise you get into a positive feedback loop, and then you better look the hell out. And things can tilt very, very rapidly. I mean, all you have to do, look at what happened in World War I. No one expected that. It was like one relatively minor member, I think, of the aristocracy, if I remember correctly, was assassinated in one minor little country. It's like, bang, everything fell apart. And that's positive feedback loops, right? And so that's what we're in right now, and and that's a really chaotic time. And so I would say, maintain self-control, and don't aim to win. Aim at peace. Because winning, that's not peace. It's better to aim for peace. You know, and I've got this talk coming up on November 11th. I'm quite worried about it, because I know there's going to be protesters there, and that they've been emboldened by the fact that they shut the talk down before. And I want to make a video, I'll probably do it tomorrow, telling everyone that comes to that meeting to, like, watch their bloody step and stay out of the gutter. Because we're at a point now where, under the wrong circumstances, if the wrong person does the wrong thing, that the consequences will be very grave. Now, we can't predict which action is going to precipitate that, or even if that will happen. But it's chaotic enough so that it could happen. So, you know, so govern yourselves accordingly. Now, the problem is that there are people who would be happy if there was blood running in the street. They're the same sort of people that shoot up high schools or kill innocent, you know, elementary school kids, just to show what they're made of and what they believe. And that's a big problem. But for the rest of us, like, hopefully calmer heads can prevail. And so it really is important not to win. It's like fighting with your wife. You don't win. You can't, because you have to live with her. You can't win. But maybe you can solve the problem and bring about peace. And so you got to practice doing that. Practice restraint. Now, and remember too that the people that you're talking about who are radical leftists, is most of the time they're not. Like, they're 95% like you. And if you pull them out of the mob, they're just like your neighbor's 19-year-old kid who's kind of clueless and rebellious, right? And who you might even like. You put them in the mob, it's a whole different thing. And so you got to remember that too.
Out of fear of social isolation. kind of how they're acting out, you're saying?
No, it's just that they're possessed by these ideas, but only partially. You know, you hardly find a full-blooded, absolutely committed, radical leftist activist, you know, like there are some, but not very many. Most of it is just fragmentary behavior. And you have to remember that. Like when the students come out to protest me, was the case particularly at McMaster, I have to remember these kids, they're not much different than my kids. They are when they're in a stupid mob behind a hammer and sickle flag, you know, but you don't want to make a low-resolution, homogeneous representation of them. And so that's why, again, I think instead of winning, you turn to your own development. You turn to your own development. You do what you can to stop doing the things that you're doing that aren't good. Because you're not going to hurt anybody if you do that. All you're going to do is help. And otherwise, you'll participate in this polarization. And that's, unless you want that, and you know, there's a dark part of people that, it's part of the part that voted for Trump, would like to burn things to the ground. It's like, to hell, I know how people felt when they went into the voting booth. It was like, Hillary, Hillary, to hell with it, Trump. You know, and that's a hell of a thing to say, to hell with it, you know. Although I could certainly understand that sentiment. So we have to be careful. And all of you people who are here, who are advocates of free speech and who are theoretically happy to come hear me speak, it's like, I really do believe it. I truly believe this. And this is something I learned in part from Solzhenitsyn and in part from Jung, is that the way that you set the world straight is by constraining the malevolence in your own heart. And that's no joke, man. That's no easy thing. And that's a good voyage for people to go on if they want something difficult and worthwhile to do. So.
Thank you very much.